Alright, so I have what I think is going to be a short update. I just checked on a few other things, just parts of the story or whatever. So first of all, and some of the things that I found that were just quite eye-opening, or just strange. But I'll start with the usual stuff. So, I looked up a Hamburg coming in out of Hawaii, because what Kuehn said in his testimony was that Dr. Hamburg had rented out his Lanikai house, and then he went on to Shanghai. And this is the guy in Shanghai eventually he was gonna do business with and make some business deals with. Just to recall, his wife owned some property in Germany. They ran out of money. They had actually approached the Japanese to get them to deliver the money, and they were going to dupe them before they actually did any work, and that's why they dropped their little poison pill in their weakly coated wire a few days prior to the bombing. But so the money chain was going to come out. Dr. William Hamburg was going to buy this land in Germany, and he's supposed to be in Shanghai. So from ancestry here, we got a man born 1903, Wilhelm Hamburg, listed residence Shanghai, China, and departure date April 4th, 1938. That's about right. And he had April 30th, 1938. I may even be able to April 15th. So he left China, got to Hawaii on April 15th, and he left Honolulu. And actually, Kuehn did say he had rented his Lanikai house out to this guy for a few weeks. This is a transcription. This is a more detail of one of the 3 listings I got here. And get this clearly here. Pasture list, April 4th, 1938. No idea that's going to be. It does say William Hamburg. If you're curious, you can check on Ancestry, okay? He was on the can't even read it. Empress of Japan, something of Japan, I can't read it. Came out of Shanghai, China, arrived Honolulu, April 4th, 1938. So he's born Batavia, Germany, and he, well, that's sharp, but it's too small. There's some kind of document that is associated with him. If you look hard enough, you might find it. Alright. A couple more times Ruth Kuehn showed up, and I started getting a little more interested in Ruth Kuehn when I went to Newspaper Archive, and for some reason she'd come up. And there's a guy, I'll just go into this whole thing here. So there's a guy named Hoyt McAfee, and this is an article about Now, Ruth Carson Moore and this guy says that Ruth Kuehn was a spy. This Hoyt McAfee. Ruth Kuehn was the spy, but this was published like in 1967 or something. Nothing about this in the FBI vault file. And pretty much says that this asserts that Joseph Goebbels had sent her to America to work for the Japanese. It says that Ruth Kuehn got all the $70,000, not the parents. This one goes to claim, and I don't know exactly. Oh, September 3rd, 1967. This guy goes as far as to claim that when she was deported and she got on and this is a really crude way, a very strange way to put this. After the war ended, Ruth Kuehn and her mother were permitted to return to Germany. No, they didn't want to be deported, trust me. Once Ruth was beyond the U.S. jurisdiction, she made the gloating remark to a Swedish diplomat, in which I found this anywhere. But she was deported in 1945, and I could try to look in newspaper archives some more, but this is not coming very clear. This is the article. If you go to newspaper archive and you do a search for Ruth Kuehn, you'll find this. Kuehn. Right here, and this isn't the first page that comes up. This is the continuation of the story, but it's page 4. Supposedly she said, my arrest at Pearl Harbor kept me from fleeing in a Japanese submarine and spending the money I'd earned. But what I did before my arrest cost the stupid Americans dearly. And I'm sure that of course, the FBI wasn't aware of this. There is one little note somewhere in this vault file, some handwritten thing where some guy randomly writes the FBI and says, "Oh, I'm aware of it," after they were arrested. If it might help the circumstances, I am aware that Friedel Kuehn went to the bank sometime in Japan. And it is true that Ruth Carson, who was called Ruth Carson Moore at the time, but she was divorcing. Here she is. This is 1935, traveling with her brother Eberhard, but this was to get their citizenship. This is actually the manifest for that. And I don't know exactly where it was going from San Francisco to Honolulu. I think they were doing a layover from on the from Japan, I think. Yokohama. What's this? Here's Ruth Kuehn on her own. This is in 1938. This is Empress of Canada. Going to the Philippines in 1936. Okay. Here's Ruth going to Shanghai, China in 1939. The SS President Hoover. And the President Lincoln, 1935, is Ruth Kuehn coming from Yokohama. Alright, so, there's some basis. Between all of them, between that whole family, there was a lot of trips to Japan. A lot. I don't know if I found them all. there's that to consider. Um, Now this author here, what's this, McAfee Hoyt? I thought it sounded like a bullshit name to me, but it's real. Um, Real guy. Had several articles. He was from Forest City, North Carolina. There's a bigger version of this here. I could barely read this, so don't even think I'd be able to zoom in. It was written in 1965. The last newspaper article I was about that I was able to find for him, he was working for the Women's Press Service in '77, and he was doing an editorial about Jimmy Carter. Anyway, he says that he was just in Pearl Harbor by chance, and in a number of his articles he says that he was there, and he was typing on his typewriter as the bombs came down on the USS Nevada, and it fought back or something, and Now the thing is, in this one, he goes a little bit here. This is a little paragraph about blinking signals, stating that, there's the ideally located den of Ruth Kuehn, a seductive blonde German girl in the employ of Japanese secret. No claim that she was involved. The wires from Japan said Friedels, but anyway, and here somewhere in these things, he claims there was a confidential report to the U.S. Senate. There is a box of stuff at some university archive that escapes me now, that does have a box for the Kuehns. When the Senate was meeting, there is a Senate hearing on the attack of Pearl Harbor, but it only has a table of contents. But I wanted to talk a little more about this guy here. This guy just keeps going on. He's going to be making money on this. This is when West Germany was there. Supposedly she's a member of the West Germany's National Democratic Party. Ruth's name is listed nowhere as belonging to this group. Its leaders feel that she can be more effective by remaining quietly and honestly. This guy makes shit up as he goes. He does. So now he claims that, there's some claims out there that the wife didn't open up the beauty parlor, but Ruth Kuehn had the beauty parlor somehow. And this, was gonna allow her to cut hair and listen to gossip and pick up on intelligence information. The same is said of supposedly Mrs. Kuehn. I've never seen this report. Could it be true? Okay, yeah, it might be true. But let's just add some veracity to this guy. So, he seems to have a desire for the dramatic. This guy, femme fatale, he's talking about a confidential report to the U.S. Senate. I don't know if you could see it. Well, that's convenient. You know, and the FBI certainly wasn't talking about this, but suddenly someone, if this was asserted, someone had decided that Ruth Carson Moore was going to be, you know, the bad person, or Ruth Kuehn, or whatever her name became eventually. You know, let's just review this. As far as I know, Ruth Kuehn was a married woman during the war, and December 8th she was wrestled from her home, held for about maybe a year, 6 months, and then she was transferred over to Crystal City, Texas till 1945. There's 4 years of her life flushed down the toilet, and then she was deported to Germany. Wasn't even allowed to stay in this country if she wanted to. Meanwhile, her parents, any cash that was sitting around the house, the government seized and probably spent. All their items were auctioned off, including some very lavish items. I found a newspaper article for that. And if that isn't bad enough, you know, her two parents making the national news. Now, suddenly Ruth Kuehn is supposedly the femme fatale, and this shown up in, you know, second-rate newspapers. You know, and he just basically claims that he learned that it was Ruth Kuehn that was collecting information, not. Okay, and we also will recall that Ruth Kuehn got divorced, and we will recall, you know, Ruth Kuehn was said to have been engaged to Dr. Homburg. I know I read that somewhere, but you know, the guy that bought the land. And then this is not Ruth Kuehn, if you're wondering. Then you know, hadn't seen the guy since 1939. Broke off the engagement. By 1941, she was married. She was in 1941, I would say, according to the ship manifest, in her 20s. You know, 24, 20, you know, something like that. She was no longer just 21. Let's see, how old was she in 35, 20. So she's born 1915. She's probably deceased by. She'd be 100 if she's still alive right now. 40. Well, she would have been 26. You know, 25 when she got married. So, you know, the clock was ticking, and she was going to wait for Dr. William Homburg, which we know is a real person, exists, and had a connection with Shanghai. Was, you know, her choice who she's going to marry. Okay, so we know about 2 romantic involvements, or of some nature. You can't really take it further than that, other than some kind of acknowledgement that there may have been a future with 2 different men, but it's not a reason. You know, one left and one was still there, so, you know. Now, I don't know why they got divorced, and I kind of really don't care, but it doesn't seem like, you know, just when her life was starting, all of a sudden she gets thrown out of the country and put in an internment camp. It doesn't sound too good to me, so I'm going to be sympathetic towards her. Now, here's another article. This is a magazine that, by the few glances I've made at it, it's actually in color and online. There's some people that this is in, actually the Adventists have this in their archive. There's another magazine just like this, actually. See if I could show it. There's another magazine. I'll show you the cover of another issue of this magazine, and then we'll get an idea of what might be going on. Okay. Or just, you know, what the leanings of this magazine happens to be. Here we go. That's J. Edgar Hoover, if you don't know, the overbearing dossier collector of the FBI. So, and this is mostly a magazine that just basically talks about how drinking is bad for you. And this article, the thesis of this article by Hoyt McAfee, who in 1967 was writing articles about how Ruth Kuehn had brought the American fleet. This one blames drink. You know, two people were drinking, having a fun time, and so now that, you know, this is why we now have a no drinking policy in the, you know, in the military. This is, Jesus. Okay, so you get the idea. This is, he's bordering on, and he did do an article on Jimmy Carter, but it was quite fantastic, mostly an editorial, comparing Jimmy Carter to previous presidents. Yeah, Jimmy Carter did have some, you know, image issues. Yeah, during his presidency, you know. But anyway, that's just so that's just a little more damage was done to this family. There was, you know, B movies or B magazines and, you know, newspapers that will show up at newspaperarchive.com and will just say that Ruth Kuehn was the mastermind, you know, as if her parents needed no income and, you know, she got $70,000. You know, I'd like to see where that quote is from the senator, but I just have to wonder. This guy did work. You know, he has more than one article in this magazine. And in the very issue after J. Edgar Hoover was interviewed and put on the front cover, he had some other article about some guy that had died at Pearl Harbor and people were mourning for him, and he was a great reporter of something. I forgot the guy's name. But I just have to wonder whether, you know, this Hoyt McAfee, he's a real guy. You know, we got a picture of him here. Was you know, just have to wonder whether he was floated some information from a certain man on the cover page. You know, it's a speculation, but there's our Hoyt. So he stopped, and I don't know what happened to him. I mean, he probably was about 20 or something when the bombs, you know, he probably was at Pearl Harbor. And, you know, some articles he says he was sitting at the typewriter typing as the bombs were going down. Some other place was saying he was, you know, scrambling about and pulling his friends throughout the rubble. You know, don't know what to believe about what this guy says. He's a bit fantastic. Some people will want to read what he says, but not everybody. So that's all I really have to say. This is the last bit of details I have, and every once in a while, if I get something, I'll look. It is, to get back to these numerous boat trips to Japan, even by the daughter, you know, in 1936 to Manila. That had to have been before the Japanese had taken over, obviously. That's a U.S. manifest. I don't know when let's look for argument's sake, when the Japanese they didn't occupy until 1942. And their goal, I guess, this took place 10 hours after the attack on Pearl Harbor. But, again, she went down there in 1936, and actually, she would have been like exactly 20 years old at that point in time. And I'm not hearing other stories about how, there may be other stories, but in fact, let's go to the link here. This is so wrong. Now Takeo Yoshikawa, yeah, he probably was a spy. But not this. Okay, where's the this link? I think it's broken last I checked, but I can do. Well, Abraham was in the war. Let's see. It doesn't say anything here. He ended up staying with the Horman family, I guess. Sand Island. Carson City, Texas. There are some, letters that were written, but it doesn't show me what happened to her. So, and your mom wanted it to be private. Let's keep it private. I don't need to know what happened to her. So anyway, it seems kind of fantastic that two parents would be hanging out in Hawaii. It doesn't make any sense to the story here that he's put forward. But if there is more information about it, I'd like to find